Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Jimmy Tingle Show. Today, the greatest thing about doing this show is I get to reunite with friends, old friends, new friends, and I have the most fun conversations when I'm talking to people that I've known for a long time. This next gentleman I've known for a long time, Mr. Don White, legendary folk singer, storyteller, entrepreneur, hustler, open mic MC, always breaking down a path for other performers. Over the pandemic, we did a ton of shows on Zoom. He turned me on to Brandon, our crack tech person today, Brandon O'Sullivan. And so, Don, I love you. Welcome to the show.
I love you too, Jimmy. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you so much.
Of course. Don is, let's get this out of the way. I had to ask you 4 times what the date was. Saturday night, March 9th, the Bull Run in Shirley, Massachusetts, folks. Yeah. Don is doing his annual birthday show. His birthday is on March 6th. On Saturday, March 9th, he'll be celebrating his 30th straight year at the beautiful Bull Run in Shirley, Massachusetts. You can get tickets at donwhite.net, and you can get tickets there. So, Don, how are you?
I'm doing really well, Jimmy. How about you? Family good? Everybody all right?
Everybody's good. Everybody's good. Brandon and I have been doing this show for about a year and a half now, and it's going really well. And it's always great when we have people like yourself on to talk about what you're up to, your music, your new CDs, your DVDs, your books. I can't believe how prolific you are, Don. How many books do you have now?
I have two books, and then 10 CDs, I think. But I'm not making CDs no more. You have to be nobody under the age of 100 buys CDs anymore. So
I know.
So I think I'm just keep writing books. Like digital hasn't done to books what it did to music. People will still buy a book. So
how long does it take you to write a book?
Longer than I want to spend on it. It's hard. Really hard, actually.
Yeah.
This last one, I wound up renting a house. A friend of mine has a house in the White Mountains, and I would go up there 3 or 4 days a week and just write with nobody bothering me. Because unlike jokes or songs, if you get interrupted in the middle of a chapter, it's hard to get back. Like even somebody just saying, "What do you want for lunch?" and you're like, "Okay, where was I?" And like I'm trying to connect something that I'm saying now with something that happened 25 pages ago. So it's hard to do it and not hate it, and do it and feel like it's good. Mm-hmm. But there's money in it. People will still buy them,
Right. Right. We just had Colin Quinn on last week, comedian Colin Quinn. He has he said something very similar about the effort that's required to actually sit down and write a book and the commitment. He's done a couple. And then before that, we had Gary Gulman on a few weeks ago, and he just got through with his book. His books, I think he said 3 or 4 years it took him to do it. And Colin, the same thing, a lot of big commitment. And I guess there is money in it. Now, do you self-publish the books?
Yes. Well, so I was in a publishing deal with my music, and I learned a lot about how it can be not that great because the publisher really takes the money. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't interested in that with either of my books. And so I have a fan base like you do, and I have a mailing list, and I'm connected to them. And so I wanted to make sure that all the money from them came to me. Mm-hmm. After that, like now that all my fans have bought it, and I'm in my second printing and all that, I would consider letting a publisher have it. But I didn't want to give them my fans money. I feel like they should go find me an audience. They shouldn't just take the money from the audience that I found. And that's what I learned in the music business.
Right. Right. You've always been in the folk world. You've always been you have to be very entrepreneurial to be successful. Would you agree?
Yes. Actually, maybe when I write again, I might write about that, like the way that I was able to carve out a career not doing anything that you're supposed to do, or you know what I mean, like just doing it, thinking out of the box. I was blessed by marrying McDermott the same way you were, actually.
Yeah.
And my wife sat me down early and said, I'll tolerate this, you being gone and me shoveling and raising these kids and you doing your day job and then running out and doing music. But as soon as you see $1, get it and bring it here and put it on this kitchen table.
Yeah.
So I felt like that was been my part of the deal. And so I always was thinking about how can this next thing that I'm doing bring some money home, at least grocery money,
Right.
something. Right.
Sure. So when you say you were thinking out of the box, Don, give me an example of that. How does a folk singer think, or how did you think out of the box and able to carve out a career in an unconventional way?
Well, the first thing is that I just made a list of all the things I had no control over and eliminated them. And that was what a record company thinks, what a radio station thinks, what people who don't know me. I just stopped putting energy into trying to book myself into places where nobody knew me. And I just thought, what do I have control of? And the only thing I could think of was I have control over what happens between me and who's ever in the audience. So I just concentrated on making fans, and making fans and keeping in touch with them, getting their mailing, their emails and all that.
Yep.
And then I just thought, this is where I have control. I didn't ignore the other things, but I put my primary focus on building a fan base. And once I had that, then other things were available to me. Venues were more interested in me because I had a fan base.
Right.
And I could bring people out. Record companies were interested in me because I could show that I sold so many CDs. I just felt like I didn't have unlimited energy. I had 2 kids and I was working 2 jobs at the time. So I had to make the most out of what I did, and dedicating the energy toward building fans turned out in the long term to be the thing that helped me have a sustaining career.
Right. It's a very smart business move because, I mean, that's what companies do. They're trying to get a customer that stays with them, not just for one purchase, but for the next 10 years, next 20 years, for life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The no fans, no career, in music.
Yeah.
In comedy, you can have like a sort of a club career, because they just put the word comedy on the door, and people will come and take a gamble on it. But
that's true.
But in music, that's not gonna. You put folk music on the door. Some guy walking down the street, you're not gonna be turning them away.
Right. I love the joke that you said. It's an old joke, but how do you make $1 million in folk music?
You want me to answer it?
Yeah.
You start out with 2 million. Yeah, that joke I think is attributable to Utah Phillips, actually, the late great Utah Phillips.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard it in theater too, but I think it's the same kind of thing. People make all these investments in there's my new play, and then it doesn't go anywhere, and no one sees your new play.
They should marry a woman who grew up in the projects, who's not going to tolerate you not being gone and not bringing back money.
Right.
That's the answer to that problem. You'll never have to deal with that. If there's somebody with their hand on her hip tapping her foot when you come in the door with no money,
That's the truth, Don. So in terms of, and I love what you did. Well, let's just talk about a little bit about, so you concentrated on creating fans, getting email lists, mailing addresses. Did you book yourself as well? Did you ever rent out theaters or clubs?
Yeah, right. I really knew that I couldn't wait around for the clubs to discover me. It was I'd never work at the beginning, and I also knew, and this I think is good advice for young people, is that you can push a venue into booking you. If you bother passing them enough, they'll hire you. But then when only 20 people come, you can never get back in the room. They just print out a piece of paper and hand it to you later and say, this is what you did last time. This is a business. We can't. So I thought, wait till I can fill the rooms to do it. So yeah, I bought a sound system. I told my fans that I would play wherever they were. They wouldn't think of it if they see me at a big venue. Like I used to play the Somerville Theater every year, and that's 1,000 seats. And somebody in that audience wouldn't think that I'd play in their barn or their living room or their backyard, especially back then before house concerts. But that's how I filled it in. And then raising money too, something that you do. You
Yeah.
know, if you collaborate with some group that's trying to raise money, then some percentage of the people come to support the cause, and some people come because they know you. So it's a good for everybody,
Yeah.
and you get a fresh audience too. You get people in the crowd that don't know you that you can make fans of if you if you don't suck, as they say.
Yeah. No, if you deliver it, if you
That's right.
just deliver and they have a good time and it's for a good cause, that's a great way to do it. You know, you talked about the comedy scene and sometimes they'll come to the comedy venue. That's true, but more and more because of the social media and because of all the digital tools that we have, you can really create an enormous career. Uh, if you're, pretty good and hustle at it and get the right people and you have the right clips and things like that, it's much more of the artist. We have much more control than we ever did before, both comics and musicians.
I agree with that. People say that it's harder now, and maybe it is in some ways, but it's better in a lot of ways too. But it all comes down to how hard are you going to work,
Hmm.
and how smart are you going to work.
Hmm.
One of the other things I thought about was I can't be good at everything. I can't be the best guitar player and the best singer and the best storyteller and all that. So I just thought, where's the least competition? And I thought, guitar players, Berkeley School of Music is churning them out by the hundreds.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of competition there. But I thought maybe if I was funny,
Yeah.
if my comedy chops were up, and that if I wrote songs that didn't sound like everybody else, let me put my energy there so that when people finally come to me, that it'll be something that they can't find somewhere else. Like if they like what I'm doing, it will be different. It won't, Uh,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
I mean, again,
definitely.
it's a slow burn. It takes a decade for that to amount to anything. But
Right.
once it does, they stay with you.
Yeah, folks, if you haven't seen Don's shows, I highly recommend it. They're funny, they're very moving. His songs are really funny. They can be really moving, which they are. They're important. He usually has a point to what he's doing. He's got a huge heart. That's why he's always has been so successful with working with nonprofits and fundraisers and things like that, food pantries and all of that. And it's all at donwhite.net. You can get in touch with him. He's got, like he said, many, many CDs. Are they all digitally available as well, Don?
It's less and less now, but there's three that are still available out there, and probably half of them where you can still find out there, and a
Mhm.
few you can buy in a hard copy. But Jimmy, I want to talk about something that you just brought up, if that's okay.
Sure.
But yeah, I love the idea, and this is something when I first met you at Catch a Rising Star, it probably was 91 or something like that.
Mhm.
We talked about the idea of not having to be funny every minute and
Yeah.
being and finding an audience that will let you go someplace other than joke,
Yeah.
joke, like that. And uh, so my feeling is that the compartmentalizing of like poets over here and folk
Yeah.
singers over here and comedians over here, that was a business decision. Like I think in Greenwich Village in the 60s, as I understand it, you could go see a show and it would have a poet and a folk singer and a comedian. Theoretically, you could have seen Lenny Bruce and Ferlinghetti and Bob Dylan all in
Yeah.
one night, and the audience was okay with that. But then some businessman said, a club owner said, if we get rid of this poet and these, we can have a comedy club and make more money. But I don't think that people, as long as the quality of what you're doing is good, then they like to go back and forth between being funny and being emotional. Nobody ever told Charlie Chaplin that he couldn't be serious and funny in the movie. Have you ever seen that movie, The Kid, with Jackie Cooper as a little kid in it? That thing is funny, so funny it will make you fall off the chair, and then it will rip your heart out.
Mm.
And so I stick to that. I stick to the idea that a complete evening for someone who comes to see me is mostly funny. Mostly, we want to have a nice time out, but strategically, there should be things to think about. There should be things that move you, make you think about your mom, something, right?
Yeah.
Not just that just the quality can't fall off. You can't have
Right.
great comedy and weak serious things. You know,
Right.
that's kind of the trick there.
Right. And I would say there's a lot more latitude for that, mixing it up serious and funny in music than there is in quote comedy, because comedy is comedy. And if it's not, if the sentences are not ending in a laugh, and if you're not eliciting laughter, then it's not really comedy. But what you were so helpful with me is that I really was attracted to the one person show format as well. I was talking to Colin about this last week. I just liked the whole up and down, the roller coaster of emotions, the commentary, combining it with the humor, combining it with making points or trying to, and combining it with, the seriousness of life, but also the humor and the spirituality of life, and the activism of getting involved and trying to do something, and not just talking about things, but trying to actually, affect change where you can, in a simple way of, or how you can. So, and you were great with that, because when I first met Don, was at Catch a Rising Star, and he was doing the open mic nights. Or they had an eclectic night, didn't they? They had Robin Horton was trying to make it music and comedy, and he was trying to do the Greenwich Village thing there, right?
Right. Yeah, and I was in the comedy, like I learned comedy chops. I would be on the bill with people, so I had to be funny.
Yeah.
And I learned, but just what you said, that these people aren't going to tolerate me not being funny. It says comedy above the door here, right? So I took I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But I like now what you said, that where I can be free to go as many places as possible.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would add to what you said, the list of things, that you can do in a show, I think the one that's the most powerful, which is it's not obvious, but it stays with people the most in these times, especially. And I see you do this a lot, and I do it, and that is hope.
Mm-hmm.
If the underlying message is hope, other people have had harder times than this, and things turned around for them. They don't understand it. Like they don't come away thinking that. It just kind of slips in. If you're a hopeful artist, if you're a hopeful person, if you're looking toward the positive, then that people are drawn to that, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, I agree. And people need it, because, I mean, if you're doing political satire, which is one of my stronger suits, but over the last couple of years, the country's so divided. I don't want to make it worse. I just did a show at the Wembley Theater in Boston over the holidays, and the name of it was Humor and Hope for the Holidays. And my personal unspoken mantra, operating principle was, number one, first, like a doctor, first, do no harm. Okay. Do no harm. And number two, don't make it worse. Everybody's bummed out. Between the election and the wars and the this and the that and the COVID and the climate, everybody is on edge. Don't make it worse. Just make them laugh and bring some hope and some joy. And that's what I tried to do. And that's what I've been trying to do in my shows.
I love that about you. I'm something that it's why we're still friends, is that you're always doing things for the right reason and cause no harm. That's a great it's a great thing to bring over from the medical industry into the
exactly the Hippocratic Oath, the comedic oath. First, do no harm.
Don't be a hypocrite.
Right. And the other thing, Don, I loved, and you were so gracious with your generosity of advice about venues to go to that were not, quote, comedy clubs, and small venues. In the folk scene, I was really able to play like a jazz club, and you can play a folk club, or you can play a rock club, or you can play a comedy club, or a theater, where you can play different types of venues. And so when I met you, and we used to go to Brother Blue's open mic nights, the great poet, street performer, Brother Blue, and Tim Mason, and the Old Vienna Coffee House, and all those folk clubs that I was able to get into and play, because they wanted things that were both funny but also had a serious element to it. So it opened up a whole nother dimension to me.
So, just on a business level, I remember thinking about being happy that I was funny, and I was just thinking in a business sense, like, how do I make the most fans, And people will say, I don't think that's funny. I'm sure you've heard it in your life. I've heard it funny, but nobody will say, I don't like to laugh. Right. So
Right.
if what you're doing, especially early in the show, when you're trying to make friends with people, when you're trying to make them relax, if that material doesn't anger them or make them tight, or if that material is friendly, I guess, and then the audience for it is every living person. Right? So
Mm-hmm.
nobody will say, I don't like to laugh. They will say, I don't like jazz, but I like folk music. They will say, I don't like that kind of humor. But everybody, if you can figure out how to be funny in a way that doesn't tighten them up, the audience is unlimited. It's every living person. And I thought about that a great deal when I was thinking about how to present my show. If your grandmother and the grandson are all laughing at it, that's a lot of audience there, I think.
Yes, definitely. And you'll have people that come to your shows that have been with you 20, 30 years, and they'll bring their kids, right?
I know.
Or their parents.
Yeah, there'll be this beautiful 25-year-old woman come up to me, Don White, my father used to sing me to sleep with your songs when I was 5 years old. I'm like, thank you. Is it Thursday? Thursday is Jello day. I want Jello.
Right. I had a woman. I go into the comedy studio, and it's a younger crowd. It's like all 20s. And one woman came up to me and she goes, Jimmy Tingle, I have to tell you, my grandmother loves you. She was dead serious. Wasn't trying to be sarcastic. My grandmother just loves you.
Yeah. See, you should have told her you could be her grandfather. How much does she love me? What's her name? Never mind. Don't tell me.
Yeah, it is pretty funny, but it's also great to be able to do what we're doing for 20, 30, 40 years,
It's a privilege.
I wanted to ask you, what is the name of the first book and what is the name of the second book?
So the first book is called Memoirs of a C Student.
Okay.
And that's been around a long time. The second book is called The Hitchhiking Years and Four Other Stories. And it's a book about, half of this book is about the fact that my wife and I left home in Lynn, Massachusetts when we graduated high school and hitchhiked for 3 years.
Wow.
And it shaped us and changed us, and it was really fun to write about. It's like a time that was like, we hitchhiked to Alaska. We estimate around 60,000 miles we hitchhiked.
Wow.
And we our brains were formed, we were young, on the kindness of strangers. Like, we couldn't move an inch without a stranger being kind to us. And so now when people tell me that there's no kindness in the world, I don't buy it. I always think like my dad. My dad would say, what's the math on this? So let's say somebody does something murderous out in the western part of the state, kills their family, some horrible thing like that. My dad would say they send a camera crew from Boston to film the horrible thing that happened in the western part of the state. How many houses did they pass that nobody did anything bad in? A million, 5 million. So 5 million to 1 is what the math is on that. Doesn't mean the bad thing didn't happen. It just means that if you're just looking at it on TV or on your scroll, they'll make you think that that's all that's happening. And the math is the opposite of that.
Right.
And there's a ton of kindness out there in the world in strangers. You can't be naive, but so it was interesting to write, and a lot of people are responding to it. Young people and all kinds of old hippies who hitchhiked and all that stuff. So.
That's great, Don. What year was that you went, or what years were you
It
hitchhiking?
was between 1975 and 1979. So we'd go for a year at a time, then come home and save money and go again.
Yeah.
So
I
total 3 years. Yeah.
Did you actually make it to Alaska?
Yeah, we hitchhiked the Alcan Highway when it was all dirt. The whole 1,400 miles of dirt road.
I
Like
was
we just
there, Don. I hitchhiked. I tried. I wanted to hitchhike to Alaska. I was telling my friends I want to find Bigfoot, and and I was convinced that I would catch Bigfoot, maybe work on the pipeline up there, the Alaskan
it was
pipeline.
still going then, 75. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was 77. And I said, I'm hitchhiking to Alaska. And I left from Somerville, right? I was across the street from my brother bought, and I was also trying to quit drinking and quit using pot. I said, I got to get out of Cambridge. There's too much alcohol. There's too much pot. I got to get out of here. So I said, I'm going to hitchhike to Alaska. So my brother Bobby drops me off across the street from the Mystic Ave housing projects where the on-ramp to 93 North, right? I got a big backpack. I got a fishing rod. I got one of those hats with the mosquito net over the head. You know? and he gives me an ounce of pot for the road. I couldn't turn it down. I got to stone him before I started smoking.
How far did you go?
Stone him. No, we eventually, I went up, I got all the way to Prince Rupert.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now, Prince Rupert, I think, is Vancouver. I don't think it's Alaska.
Yeah, that's in British Columbia. Yeah.
Right, British Columbia. The ferries were on strike. That's why I didn't get up to Alaska. I had a choice. I could go to take the ferry up to Alaska or go that 1,600-mile dirt highway, right? And I said, I don't know how many people are going to be out on a dirt road to pick me up. But I elected to go to the ferries, and when I got up there, they were on strike, so I could never technically get into Alaska. But it was an interesting time, and it was a safer time. And I think what screwed it up is like your father's philosophy, like, okay, all of a sudden people started hitchhiking and started disappearing, right? and when that happened, talking the late 70s, and then it started, people were afraid and people wouldn't pick people up. And that's what wrecked it.
I don't know about that. I had to do a ton of research on this. I get emails from kids now who do it.
Oh,
like
really?
They do it in Alaska and Hawaii and places like that. And it's funny. It's interesting. They take a photograph of the license plate and they send it to their mother. So every car that they're in, somebody knows where they are. It's like technology. We didn't have none of that. I think you shouldn't do it if you don't have to, and I wouldn't recommend anyone did it. But I think you could do it and be okay. You can't be naive. That's all. You can't. I'll send you a copy of the book. You can, we had these little rules about who got in first and who not to get in with, and just stuff that you learned growing up in Lynn about, being careful about who you're around. That's all. Mostly just kindness, and that's the thing.
But it was, at the time, it was very socially acceptable.
It was common, You get let off on a ramp and there'd be 20 other people there.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, those are some good times. So I got to get the book.
Yeah,
so where can people get the book?
DonWhite.net.
DonWhite.net. Excellent. Mm-hmm. So Don, let's see. Anything else you want to say?
No, March 9th at the Bull Run, already 100 tickets sold. So it's going to be a really good, fun night. My son's going to be there. A bunch of my friends sitting in with me. It's like a party. Yep.
All right. March 9th, the Bull Run in Shirley, Don White's annual birthday bash. You check them out, folks. It's going to be a blast. It'll be family and friends. If you've never seen Don, I highly recommend them. You will laugh. You will feel better. You really will. And you'll feel better about humanity, and you'll feel better about being in Shirley, Massachusetts at the Bull Run. I'm telling you, it's a great place. They got great food. You can get there early, have dinner. It's a super place. The people are wonderful, very friendly. It's a great place. And Shirley, Mass is awesome as well. Let me just put a plug in for Shirley as well. And it's not that far from Boston. What's it, about 30 miles?
I think maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great place. DonWhite.net. You can get his book. You can get tickets to all his shows, his CDs, his DVDs, get on his mailing list, and stay in touch with him. He's one of the best, and he's one of a kind. And I'm proud to call him my friend. He really helped me a lot in a lot of ways, and I so appreciate it, Don.
Right back at you, Jimmy.